Hi everyone, this is Philip Travis, and this announcement is for week 5 of American History Part 1. This week we have a very important assignment. We have our first paper option. Now remember, in this class you only have to write one paper and you'll have 3 options to do so. So we have this option. A week after our second test, you'll have another option, and then at the end of the term, you'll have a third option. Do not leave this to the last option, though. And remember, these are options, so I allow you the opportunity to do the paper a second time. So if you do your first paper, you don't get the grades you wanted it, you could do the second paper or the third paper, and I will drop the lowest score and keep the highest paper score, so it cannot hurt you. What I'm looking for on the paper, and the paper winds up being 3.5 pages, 4 pages, somewhere in that ballpark. What I want you to do is I want you to use at least three academic sources and make a historical argument about some aspect of the course that we've been dealing with so far. So each paper is supposed to reflect the part of the course that we just completed. So the course is broken into 3 chunks, and at the end of each chunk you have a test. And so if you do paper 1, then you can write your paper on any of the topics, or related to it if we didn't deal with it, but any of the topics that we dealt with from the beginning of class through that first test that we just took. And I want to see you use, and you can of course use your textbook as one source, but I want to see you use at least 3 academic sources. Use our library. They have great databases there. You can log in through SCF, and you can use the library and access a lot of documents and books that are digitized and available for you in an online classroom like this. So I want to see 3 academic sources. No Wikipedia, no dictionary.com. I want to see academic sources about these topics. And what you want to write about is really up to you. Remember, when writing these papers, make a historical argument. Don't just summarize. Don't just say, I'm writing about Bacon's Rebellion, and then go step 1. This is this, and this. Don't summarize like that. Instead, if you're writing about Bacon's Rebellion, draw the reader in the introduction. Explain what Bacon's Rebellion is about, and then explain why is it significant. What are you going to argue? Bacon's Rebellion is significant because it represented a transition away from a society with slaves to a slave society, and this carried tremendous ramifications for issues of race and inequality in the history of the United States long after Bacon's Rebellion. That's an example of a historical argument that you could make. So make a historical argument. Make sure you finish that introductory paragraph off with a nice thesis statement. Maybe set it up with a question. And then 3 or 4 paragraphs where you use those sources that you're working with to sort of prove that argument, to provide the evidence for that argument, and then sum it up in a nice conclusion. Make sure you cite the paper. You can use parenthetical citations in this class. Just put the author's last name and the page number. If there is no author, just the title and the page number in a parentheses at the end of the sentence that you're citing or the paragraph you're citing. And then at the bottom of the page, just provide a list of the sources. I'm not going to torture you on the exact citation form. You're going to learn different types. Historians, we use Chicago style. If you want to be a historian, maybe try to look that up and start using that. However, I'm not going to torture you on a citation style. Just use parenthetical citations in the text of the paper, and at the end of the paper, just provide a list of the sources. All sources should have author, title, publisher information. A URL address is not a citation or a source listing. Okay, so hopefully that's pretty clear. So you don't have to do this paper if you don't want to, but you could get it out of the way and give yourself 2 options to improve your grade if you want to. So paper option 1 is due by Sunday of this week. Very interesting week, I think, as well, because we are talking about the founding of the nation. We'll be reading chapters 6 and 7 from our textbook this week, and we will be discussing in our weekly discussion forum some of the important ideas connected to the founding of the United States. We will be also examining the two primary source documents, James Madison's Federalist 51 and Patrick Henry's Anti-Federalist 51, which kind of symbolize the dispute over the ratification of the Constitution in the United States. Okay, so hopefully that's pretty clear. This should be a fun week. I'm really excited to talk about some of these important moments in the founding of the United States. Here's our factoid. Remember, if this is the first announcement you're watching, every week I provide a factoid in the announcements, and all you have to do is, for extra credit, is email me that factoid no later than Wednesday by midnight. Each time you do that, it is worth 1 bonus point added to a test score at the end of the term, which can be the difference in 2, 3, maybe even 4 percentage points on your final grade. Not the final test grade, on the final grade, if you do a lot of them or all of them. So just simply email me this factoid, and I will put your email in that special folder, and you get checked 1 point towards a test score at the end of the term. Here's the factoid. One might argue that the first president of the United States was not George Washington, but that instead the first president of the United States was an individual named John Hanson. The reason some might argue that is because during the Articles of Confederation period in the 1780s, the United States, the Constitution of the United States, is the second government of the United States. The first governing document of the United States is called the Articles of Confederation, a governing system that really failed, as we will look at this week. However, in the Articles of Confederation, there was no executive branch. There was no presidency in the way that you think about it today. Instead, there was just a legislative body, a Congress. The Congress had a president who presided over the Congress. And the first president of the Congress of the United States during the period of the Articles of Confederation was an individual named John Hanson. And John Hanson became the president of the Congress in 1781. Interestingly, and this is quite interesting as well, John Hanson, even though we don't remember, I'm sure none of you have probably ever heard of John Hanson. I myself don't think I was ever taught about John Hanson in a college class that I ever took. John Hanson actually was the first individual to create a Treasury Department. John Hanson was the first to appoint a Secretary of War. We don't have that anymore since the Department of Defense was created after World War II. But the first to appoint a Secretary of War, the first to create a Treasury Department, and interestingly, John Hanson was the first president, well, he's not the president, but he was the head of Congress. He was the first, as the head of Congress, to establish the date of Thanksgiving as the 4th Thursday of November. So John Hanson, the head of Congress, the first head of Congress during the period of the Articles of Confederation, who created the date for Thanksgiving, appointed the first Secretary of War and Treasury Department, and some might argue, even though he wasn't technically an executive branch president, that maybe because he presided over Congress, he's the first president of the United States. All right, let's have a great week. Email me if you have any questions. Remember, if you don't want to do paper 1, you can do paper 2. It's not a big deal. If your schedule, is really busy right now, then maybe you want to do paper 2. If it's not, maybe you want to do this and get it out of the way. But it's due no later than Sunday this week. So let's have a great week. Email me that factoid, and I'll see you in the discussion forum.